Welcome to the Three Martini Lunch. Grab a stool next to Greg Columbus of Radio America and Jim Garrity of National Review. Three Martinis coming up.
Hey, so glad you're with us for the New Year's Day edition of the Three Martini Lunch. Happy New Year. Happy 2025. We have made it. If you haven't listened to all of our year-end awards, please do so. There are 6 installments of those. They began back on December 23rd. And then yesterday, we brought you our Person of the Year, our Loser of the Year, new category this year, and Turncoat of the Year. And today we are doing our predictions for 2025. In previous years, this had been one category in one of the specials, but today we're going to do predictions all across this particular edition of the Three Martini Lunch, and we're going to do it in decreasing order of confidence or increasing order of outlandishness. So hopefully it'll be pretty fun by the time we get to the end of today's predictions. And so we'll start with things that are much more likely to happen. And by the end, who knows? We might have the Bears and the Jets in the Super Bowl. We might have E.T. Coming. Who knows? But Jim, where do you start? What's your least controversial prediction of 2025?
Well, someone once told me that if you want to make a prediction, if you want to look really insightful and someone who can see things before they happen, find something that is true, but that people don't really know. Predict that it will happen, and lo and behold, you're already right. And that's kind of what I want to do. In 2025, Greg, the United States will be the world's largest energy producer and the world's largest energy exporter. Now, that's already the case, but nonetheless, my prediction is that this will continue and that this will be probably one of these true bright spots in the American economy. I think the U.S. will have actually a pretty good economic year in the year to come. I think, not just drill, baby, drill. Ironically, it sounds like the gas and oil producers, we're okay on drills, particularly with directional drilling. We actually have an amazing capacity to get the stuff. What we need is permitting. What we need is to make it easier to get the paperwork to get everything done here. Probably more liquid natural gas terminals, more liquid natural gas ships and stuff like that. But I want to call your attention, Greg, to something I didn't even know about, but I've now looked up and is also apparently Energy Digital is saying is going to be a very big deal. You ready?
Yeah.
Blue hydrogen. Now, apparently It's a lot cooler because it's different from green hydrogen because it's a different color. As far as I know, so this is a next big thing in energy production, and the U.S. is slated to become the world's leader in blue hydrogen in 2025. Do I understand the significance of that? No, but it sounds like this is like a pretty reliable take, and it sounds like anything where we are producing energy is a good thing. It reduces the rest of the world's reliance on places like Russia, Saudi Arabia, Venezuela, whole bunch of hostile regimes, et cetera. Also, by the way, China is supposed to do a lot more coal. So I guess you could say an adjunct of this prediction is that U.S. carbon emissions will continue to go down while China's carbon emissions continue to go up, even though we're constantly hearing about how great they are with green tech and what terrible people we are by driving our SUVs and eating Big Macs and things like that.
Interesting prediction. Yeah, I'm glad to see that we're already in that position. And I'm sure with the Trump administration coming in, that will only get better. I certainly hope that's the case. I was about to ask you what blue hydrogen would actually be used for. And so hopefully there are many uses for that.
Hydrogen. You use it for energy things. And it's blue, as you know. Remember in one of the Star Trek movies, they had red matter, right? So this is blue hydrogen. It's just you know who knows a lot about this, Greg?
Mr. Scott,
Blue Man Group.
Okay. Nice. Well, Jim is clearly doing this in a more scientific manner than I am this year. He's actually done research and not just going with gut instincts, but. Anyway, that's where I am. So my prediction is...
Lots of research. Lots of research.
Talking about things that aren't going to change, this one's not good. Our fiscal discipline is not going to get any better for a number of reasons. First of all, we just had another omnibus frustration at the end. It's always right before Christmas, whenever they kick the can down the road right before the start of the fiscal year so they don't have to shut down the government then. It always ends up in December, and basically everybody wanting to get out of town, so they vote, enough people vote yes to get it done. And, at the end of this Congress, you had a democratically controlled Senate, you had a Democratic president, so the Republicans' hands are tied a little bit, but they could have at least held the line on existing levels of spending and sunsetting this bill at a perfect time for the next Congress and Trump to tackle it. There were some who wanted to kick it all the way to the beginning of the next fiscal year, which is just ridiculous. So, but here's the other problem. it's a 217 to 215 House as soon as Stefanik and Waltz, or I think Waltz already is gone, but as soon as Stefanik is confirmed, Gates is already gone. And so all you need is one suburban Republican or Republican with certain interests in their district that they got to get this passed or it's going to be politically fatal for them. And you're at a dead heat and you can't pass it out of the House. You still got filibuster issues in the Senate. So you can doge all you want, and I hope they doge a lot. But in the end, it's got to get through Congress, and in margins these tight, it's going to be very difficult, at least in the very beginning. We're not going to have some of these vacancies filled till April. So it's going to be unlikely. And even if you were to get a bigger margin, I still remember 2017 where Mitch McConnell was saying, well, we don't have 60 in the Senate. So what are you going to do? Well, somehow the Democrats figure out a way to do it. You can figure it out too. Not having a lot of hopes that we're going to be getting a lot of taxpayer support from Washington as per usual.
Greg, it's I think a very likely prediction. It fits our category of our safest prediction. In your course of your answer, though, I think I concur. I think doge should become a verb. Maybe this is my bonus prediction. It probably should mean to eliminate something unnecessary and wasteful, and you're not even sure why it exists in the first place. So, they said we should have a meeting, but I just doged it. They asked for a request for a donation. I doged that one too. It sounds kind of like Dodge, just kind of this thing like, sure, we don't need this, Like
exactly.
Like Millet did on Argentina, where he's taking it, gone, away, abuela,
Afuera,
doge it, man, doge it, doge the heck out of it.
Yeah, I was just reminded by my family this week about a time when my dad was in city government, and he decided to, and others decided to do a big dive into where they could cut some spending. They found out that the city was still spending money on a phone line to some sort of infrastructure site that had been torn down like decades before. So not a huge expense, but those things add up. And so if you're not keeping track of these things, and in a federal government as bloated as ours, there's a lot of room to cut without doing any damage. So anyway, good luck, Elon. Good luck, Vivek. Good luck, Congress. But my hopes for you are not high. All right, Jim, kind of the middle of the road here. Bold, but not outlandish yet. Where do you land there?
Yeah, so for this one, actually, middle of the road, I'm also taking kind of a middle road between two scenarios. Last year, I had the chance to go to, back in 2023, I had the chance to go to Taiwan for a week. I don't think by the end of 2025, China will have invaded Taiwan. Having said that, I think by the end of 2025, this will be a preeminent issue in the minds of lawmakers, and not just the national security hawks and geeks who pay attention to this sort of thing. One of the Twitter accounts I subscribe to is part of the Taiwanese Ministry of Defense, and they keep track of how many Chinese planes. People's Liberation Army Navy, which sounds like it should be a football game, and the People's Liberation Army Air Force. The number of planes they have flying across the very unenforced line between the Taiwan Strait, basically going into Taiwanese airspace, and each time they go a little bit further and they send a little bit more planes, and you track this over time. The numbers are increasing, which is both an obvious attempt at intimidation at the Taiwanese people and the Taiwanese government. And also, I suspect that if you bit by bit, week by week, month by month, you get more and more used to seeing waves of Chinese fighter jets and possibly bombers and other support craft all coming at you. The day they don't turn around and they actually attack you'll just, it's like the boy who cried wolf. People get used to it. And you just kind of this, or the boiling frog metaphor, if you prefer that. So I suspect, based on the rate of increase, I think by the end of next year, you're going to see some very big waves going that way. And it'll be clearly an indication that, look, China has not given up its ambitions. The window of opportunity for them, you look at the demographics of China, is probably closing. Xi Jinping reportedly has told the generals be ready by 2027. Then in a meeting with Biden, he said, I know you've heard that. I know I've seen people say that you're never going to see it coming, which, kind of indicates maybe it's 2027, maybe it's before, maybe it's later. But I suspect by the end of the year in 2025, we'll be very unnerved by developments and very concerned about how do we deter Chinese invasion of Taiwan, even more than we are at this time as 2024 is closed, 2025 is beginning.
Yeah, certainly plausible. I noticed Trump's really trying to do kind of at least a public charm offensive with Xi, inviting him to the inauguration, which I'm sure is not going to happen and so forth. And Trump also has kind of that unpredictability streak to him, which had some people off balance in the first term. So maybe that'll work to his advantage. But China's got their plan. I mean, they've got this like century-long agenda. It's not a 4-year plan like we do in American politics. And so they're going to work their plan as they see fit. And I wouldn't be surprised. I was shocked, and you mentioned it many times during the campaign, how little attention China got. The only question on it, I think, in the debates was about Tim Walz and Tiananmen Square, which is not really related to U.S. policy. And so, again, constantly flying under the radar, and China just keeps building and building and building. So that's a good one. Thought about making this one my second one. I don't think it's aggressive enough. But I'll just say it anyway. I think Kamala doesn't run for governor of California, and I think Buttigieg does run in Michigan. But we'll see about that. But jumping off of my earlier, more safe prediction about Congress and spending, the Democrats will briefly control the House of Representatives in the spring of 2025. Because once those people are gone, it's 217 to 215. Not saying I know how it's going to happen. Hopefully nobody dies, but it's certainly possible with 217 people. And, you know, there could be different job opportunities. You just don't know what's going to pop up. I hope it doesn't happen, but it's very, very concerning that it's that close. And you've basically got 3 months between the start of the new Congress and the filling of the first seat, which I think is the Matt Gaetz seat on April 1st in Florida, and then the Walz and the Stefanik seats after that. So definitely one where I hope I'm wrong, but there's such a small margin for error there and so many different people in the mix. I don't think it's out of the question. So my second prediction is that Hakeem Jeffries will briefly be Speaker of the House until the Republicans fill those seats.
Greg, that is the perfect balance of bold but plausible. Because, and you know, all it would take is like really 1 or 2 flights being delayed out of Texas because of bad weather. And suddenly you don't have a bunch of Republicans who, you know, coming into town on time. They say they're going to work 5 days a week next week or next year in the House of Representatives. Now, for those who aren't familiar, back when I was covering the House in 98, 99, the Mesozoic era, we rode dinosaurs to Capitol Hill. On Mondays, the House would begin in session, usually around 4 or 5, late in the afternoon, and they'd vote on like renaming post offices. It was the sort of thing where if you missed the vote, it was not going to be anything. You'd have 3 solid days of work, sometimes really deep into the evening. And then sometimes Thursdays, you'd go to midnight, 1 a.m. And because I was covering House floor votes for one of those years, I absolutely hated that. Then Friday morning, if you absolutely need to, they would do stuff in the morning, but they're saying you could smell the jet fuel from National Airport because all the cars lined up. And as soon as that last vote was in, get your vote, get out of there, you know, that stuff. So, you know, people groan, Congress only works 3 days a week. There are parts of Monday and Friday there. But the reason they do that is because if you're a member of Congress, unless you live in Hawaii or Alaska, you want to go back to your district as often as you can, particularly on weekends. A lot of these guys have their families back in their home districts. If you have your family in D.C., people are going to say, you've gone native. So they're trying to get back to their districts as often as they can. So they need Monday and Friday as travel days. So that's a factor in that schedule there, which means they do a lot of flying. Which means, one thunderstorm over one part of the country or bad snowstorm or something. Well, all of a sudden they can't get in there. And, again, if it's renaming a post office, it doesn't matter if you don't have a bunch of people coming in. But if you can't, on a Tuesday morning, you still don't have it. Then it gets a lot harder to get actual work done in floor votes. So, that's a really plausible one, Greg. I wish I thought of that.
Again, I hope I'm wrong. And hopefully even with just the 1 seat majority for a while, well, 2 officially, but 1 flip and it's tied, they can still do something on border security, maybe extend the tax cuts. I don't know. But it's going to be a tough sledding for sure because there's not a lot of moderate Democrats up there. All right, Jim. Outlandish. What's the craziest thing that could possibly happen here in 2025?
So actually, this is probably one where you're going to say, Jim, that's much more plausible than I wanted it to be. So as listeners know, I write thrillers, which means I spend a lot of time thinking about terrorism. I spend a lot of time thinking about, this is a development. How could this go wrong? And I could have done, last novel was about quantum computing. A lot of people worried about AI, Russia, China, Iran. There's all kinds of problems. But I started thinking about terrorism, old-fashioned blowing stuff up, hijacking planes, all that kind of stuff. And, Al-Qaeda is still out there, but they're a shadow of their former selves. ISIS, it's just a development of how weird things are. In December, a member of the Haqqani group, a rather notorious, kind of mercenary-ish terror for hire group in Afghanistan. The good news is one of their high-level guys got killed. The bad news, it was by ISIS. So I don't know whether we're obligated to send a fruit basket or something, or, just one of those things where the Islamist terror does not keep us awake at night the way it used to. So I'm actually not predicting that. But I wonder, particularly thinking about the assassination of Brian Thompson late last year, my grim, outlandish prediction is that by the end of 2025, there will have been a major terrorist attack committed on U.S. soil against Americans by some sort of left-wing terrorist group. Now, might be a lone wolf, but I start to wonder if at some point you will see like-minded, angry people who are angry about Trump's election. They're angry about the fact that Democrats are shut out. I kind of wonder how much they've had their hopes raised by Bernie Sanders, AOC, et cetera, and this belief that, the socialist revolution is just around the corner, and it hasn't happened. That they've had the bait and switch, and they've had Lucy and the football so many times that, instead of saying, you know what, I hate politics and I want to go, get into stamp collecting or something else with their lives, like they're full of rage and they're just looking for a chance. They've convinced themselves that shooting somebody or blowing something up will make the world a better place. This will make them listen or something like that. I think the reaction to Brian Thompson late last year was really a dark and disturbing thing. And again, it doesn't take a large group to do something terrible. So my fear is that by the end of 2025, and as for the ramifications of this, I have no idea. I'm hoping the backlash against this kind of left-wing extremist groups would be harsh, but I don't know. You always seem to be people who can find ways to justify it and explain it away and make excuses for it. Going back to the attempt to kill a Republican congressman on the softball field, numerous examples of Zeldin getting stabbed on stage, and guy got out on bail later in the day. So there's no shortage of this sort of thing. It's been kind of percolating. My fear is by the end of this coming year, we'll have some sort of really terrible event, and that will be one of the big things we talk about in the year to come. Happy New Year, everybody.
It's not the cheeriest, but I can potentially see that happening. I can see people, snapping when Tom Homan starts deporting thousands and thousands of illegals, even though he's starting with the criminals. And the more the rhetoric goes on here, it seems like that's largely where they're going to be focusing. I don't know that it's going to be rolling back all 8 million or whatever it is, but that's the type of thing that, the media is going to gin up into some humanitarian crisis, because one of these criminals, or probably a few of these criminals, are going to have cute kids or people who are achieving in high school or whatever the story is. The fact that they want to remove these people, it's going to create huge emotions on the left, especially. And I can see something like that potentially happening, which would not be good. So I had a couple in mind, one which I don't think is going to happen. So I'll mention it briefly, and that's the abolition of the Department of Education. But again, with the margins in the House and Senate, I don't think that's actually going to happen. So this one would be more unilateral on the president. Again, we're in the unlikely phase here of the predictions, but I'm hoping it actually happens, and I don't know exactly what it looked like, but I hope that Donald Trump can broker an end to the Russia-Ukraine war. And so he claims he can do it in 24 hours. I don't think that will happen. He's apparently already had discussions. He certainly has with Zelensky, and I don't know what discussions he's already had with the Russians. Whether he's actually got a plan, Nixon had a plan when he ran, and obviously didn't wrap things up all that quickly, but eventually did. And then with Trump, maybe he brings them together. Maybe he has incentives. Maybe he threatens them with 25% tariffs and gets results like he did with Canada and Mexico. I don't know. It's probably more wishful than based in concrete facts like your earlier Martini, but that's the one I'm gunning for here.
Greg, that is not a crazy one. I guess it all depends on how you define peace. I think it's, when you speak to the Ukrainians, the two phrases they keep using are a just peace, not just peace, a just peace, and also a lasting peace. I think it's really, considering the casualties that have been inflicted upon Russia and the fact that they still occupy, 19, 20, 20% of the pre-war borders of Ukraine, it's very conceivable that Vladimir Putin decides to take his winnings and cut his losses and say, okay, fine. The question is, does Russia then pick this up a year from now, 2 years from now, 3 years down the road and say, okay, now we're coming for the rest of what we wanted. We've restocked, we've rearmed, we've built up our army again. Obviously, that would give the Ukrainians more time to do that too. But the next question is, can you reach a point where there is a boundary that neither side is willing to start shooting over again much higher order. But yeah, I would love to see a just and lasting peace take place in Ukraine as much as anybody.
No doubt, given your excellent reporting there on multiple trips. So again, some hopefulness, some dread on some of this stuff, and we'll see how much of it actually comes true. If we stink, we probably won't mention it a lot at the end of 2025. If we're right, you won't hear the end of it. So Jim, Happy New Year to you. Regular fare tomorrow. We'll be there. See ya.
This podcast message will self-destruct in 15 seconds.
Yes.
See you tomorrow, Greg.
There's the safest prediction. Tomorrow's edition of the Three Martini Lunch with our usual good, bad, and crazy. He's Jim Garrity of National Review. I'm Greg Corombos of Radio America. Thanks so much for being with us today. Thanks for subscribing. Please do so if you don't already. Tell your friends to do it. Thanks for your 5-star ratings, your great reviews. Keep those coming as well. Join us on your home devices. All you have to say is play Three Martini Lunch podcast. Follow us on Twitter, X, I guess. He's at Jim Garrity. I'm at Dateline_DC. Have a happy New Year's Day and join us again on Thursday for the next Three Martini Lunch.